Okay, my first question is which day was yesterday?
I can't remember. Just act like you know. Just act like you
That-
remember.
that's about as far as we got.
The future of music.
The future of music. The future of music.
The future of music.
The future of music.
The Future of Music podcast.
Hey there, once again, my friends. We're here. We are on the Future of Music podcast, where, of course, we show you how to survive and thrive in the future of music. I am Ryan Withrow, one of your hosts. My other host is right next to me in virtual land. Not really. I just realized that some people watch on YouTube, but some people listen. We're not together. I wish we were. But Jonathan Boyd is here with me. John, how are you? First of all, you're still home. You haven't traveled yet, which is good. I'm proud of you.
No.
But yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a minute, man. Let me ask you a direct question. Just to have some fun.
Mhm.
What'd you do
Let's hear
yesterday?
it.
What was your yesterday like?
Okay, my first question is which day was yesterday?
I can't remember. Just act like you know. Just act like you
That-
remember.
that's about as far as we got.
That's good. That's boring content, John. Listen, okay. Yesterday was September 26th, Tuesday.
Tuesday, just building stuff, man. Building stuff for the folks. That's literally all I do anymore.
Building. What were you building? What were you doing?
Well, we got to teach people how to play music, how to learn about music, how to make money with music. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah. I didn't build. I don't think. I think I played and worked. Played guitar, of course. Worked, and then I cleaned my office. That's what
There you
the
go.
30s look like. That's what the middle-aged man with tattoos does for
Mhm.
a fun time now. So it's good, But
It's a new
hey,
show.
it is.
It's called Cleaning the Office.
Well, I like the longer title. I think middle-aged guy that keeps busy and lives boring life show.
That's
Is
the
what it is.
description on Netflix.
Yeah, or the title. There are some wacky titles at this point.
Fair
I don't
enough.
even know what they're
Fair
putting out now on Netflix. I mean, my recommendations make me feel like I must be the weirdest person in the entire world for it to think that that's my algorithm, But anyway, speaking of algorithms, we've got to talk technology. We got to talk music technology stuff. And we're going to talk AI music technology stuff. You and I were just talking about AI in the sense of other stuff too, which is
Mhm.
just crazy to me. I'm sure the other people listening may not know. I have a very huge history with sales. Sales was my gig because music turns out didn't pay me anything. But I just heard like the first AI salesperson having a real conversation with a customer that had no idea that they're having a conversation with an AI salesperson who closed the customer into a $3,000 product. So, of course, we're talking AI specific to music, but AI in general,
Mhm.
man, it's just booming. So it makes sense to bring it back to the fold here. So I
Yep.
know that we're going to talk about AI music stuff. We're going to talk about the Grammys, of course, and we're going to talk
Mhm.
about some Spotify interesting stuff. But we had a question as well that I think we're going to be able to answer even more of. Last week, somebody asked, how do I make money? How do I make money
Mhm.
with AI? We're definitely going to have a conversation on that a little further today. But we're also going to talk about that backpedaling from Spotify a bit and help you understand what to expect from platforms like Spotify as a musician or as a listener. And again, just the ever-growing landscape of AI. But what are your thoughts? You got anything to pump them up, or did I do a good enough job? Did I do good?
I think you did a great job, man. But you know what? I think the biggest thing for me is that the tide has turned. So all of the big companies that were kind of against it, now things are starting to shift, and we're starting to see them get into it. It's kind of like if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing. So we're going to dive into that today.
Indeed. Very, very open loop like. Good. And if you haven't yet, make sure the subscribe thing, and then the follows, and then all that stuff. Just make sure you're always paying attention to us, okay? We like to do this by ourselves, but I think it makes more sense and it's more sane if we know other people are following it too. And it makes us feel better about just hanging out and talking randomly. But Grammys, man, we've talked about the Grammys 2 times, but maybe 200. Grammys, I remember us talking maybe in episode like 5 about how the Grammys were evaluating AI generated music and how they had this idea of, you know what, let's let it roll out. Let's not say we're removing anybody or anybody's music. Let's potentially allow awards for AI generated music. And we really hadn't heard like a final statement from them. But now, boom, we're not going to award AI creativity unless it falls under two specific categories: humans writing music, and then like humans using other people's voices that are approved and okay to be used. But they're coming out now and saying, oh, okay, well, we're going to backpedal a little bit. We're going to accept it, but we're going to award AI creativity with people being creative with AI only. No AI doing it by itself. It has to have some human element, and it's official now. But speaking of that, the big topic today that I want your feedback on, John, Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
Spotify, for the longest time, has been known as somebody that's just not accepting of AI generated music, but they are now embracing it. Turns out, backpedal, and they're
Imagine
actually
that.
using it as well. Ooh, what do you know? Companies using AI because it's good. But the Spotify founder literally said, I do not intend to ban any AI generated music. So I'll give you the high level of this article that came out. It was an interview with BBC that Daniel Ek, the founder of Spotify, had. And for the longest time, people really based what he was going to do in the future on one action. There was a song that was released from Drake and The Weeknd, AI, without their
Mm-hmm.
authorization. It went into Spotify and it took off. Like it started doing really well, and he removed it. He was like, nope, not going to have that at all. But that led to people thinking, okay, well, AI generated music is not a thing you're going to be interested in. You're done with it. Not the case. Not the case. He sees it being used in buckets of AI usage. There are tools such as like auto tune and other things that improve music. Those are now allowed. So you could use AI tools and plugins that assist in your music creation, which we've talked about. That's acceptable in his book. Tools that are used to mimic other artists are acceptable as long as the artist is in agreement with that as well. And then, other things where it's human interaction and legal interaction is allowed. So again, we come to this point where they're trying to regulate it. They don't know how to regulate it really yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying their best to put out some rules, but they're all now adopting it. The adoption of AI is at the forefront, and so much that they're starting to use it to do podcast translations for Spotify. So
Of
they're
course not.
starting to be like, okay, we've got an English podcast. Let's use AI to translate it to Spanish. Let's do that. So we're seeing first acceptance, but also use. I mean, I'm guessing your thoughts are like, we expected it, but let's throw it to you. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, we have two terms: regulation and adoption. The purpose of regulation is to prevent something. The purpose of adoption is to allow something. So if we just think about it, there's, I think Charlie Munger, probably somebody else said this first, but I think I heard it from Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, who said the world is governed by incentives. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And if we think about businesses, I mean, Spotify is a public company. What do you think they want to prevent or allow? They want to prevent their business from being, taken away in somehow, their business declining, right? And they want to allow their business appreciating. So
Mm-hmm.
I think basically anything that's going to allow that to happen, that's what they're going to be in for. And that's why it's not surprising at all to me that they're like, yeah, no, AI is not any good. We're not going to allow that crap on here, because they perceived it as a threat at first. And then they started to see how they can make money out of it. And now they're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, sure. Yeah, you can do this and you can do that. Sure, of course.
Yeah, and he said there's a quote from him in the interview that says, it's going to be tricky. Like it's not going to be easy to find all this stuff and really regulate it, but it's something he's implementing. And he also, with that too, one thing to note, they're not using it in the reverse. They're not allowing AI to be trained on Spotify music and playlists and everything as well.
Hmm.
So they do have certain regulations in place on the opposite side. But again, anything that benefits them, they're into, they're excited about, and they're excited to do. But it really does continue the conversation too of using artists, because that's a very like adamant no, not unless the artist is in
Yeah.
agreement and you're allowed to do this, which could be helpful for the artist. But is that catchable? Like, are we going to be able to catch 100% of those? No. So what do you do then? You
No.
just kind of slip through the cracks, I guess.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying, is that they're going to start. It's kind of like a waterfall, right? Once a little bit of water starts going over the edge, you just can't prevent the rest of it from going over the edge. So the way I see it is, not only is AI getting better by the day or by the hour or by the minute, you like the ability to detect it is going to decline as well the better it gets. So, as a company, how much effort do you put into policing something like that when you're probably going to detract from your main business because resources aren't infinite? And I just think that they're probably going to just let it go after a while.
Hmm.
I think when it comes to copyright infringement, of course, there already are, but there's probably going to be more stringent regulations around that, and I don't know how exactly they're going to tackle it, especially because of the detection issue that we talked about.
Hmm.
But I don't see a world over the next 1 to 2 years plus where they can really do anything about it. I think they're just going to have to let it flood the marketplace.
The people want what the people want. That's what it is.
Exactly.
Because it takes me back to the days of Napster, right? Remember that
Hmm.
massive fight and struggle, especially Metallica, right? Poor Lars. But that massive fight for no, you cannot stream our stuff. There's no way. It's free. You can't download it. And there was such a battle back in the day for this ability. And then you see like now, like imagine if when Napster was out, we knew what was coming down the line with streaming services and the fact that albums weren't really a thing anymore and CDs are
Hmm.
gone. And it's just whatever
CDs.
people want. Yeah, whatever people want is what is going to end up being a creation
Exactly.
and being used. So it's now about how do we make money there for it. But again, we're talking about what we've always talked about. Sure, this company is going to profit from it. Not so sure the artist is going to profit from it. Sure, can you make some money? And we introduce this idea. Sure, we talk about the idea of like doing YouTube focused AI generated music channels. Well,
Hmm.
now Spotify completely allows anything as long as it's not a copyright issue or anything like that. It's all created by human. You could have your input in there. Seems like they'll allow those now, which is fine. So it's another potential revenue stream in using AI music. But it's minimal. We know that. We know that it is a percentage of pennies per stream that you're able to gain from this. So, do we then see maybe in the future, and we'll talk about what we think is coming here.
Hmm.
In the future, do we start thinking, well, maybe Spotify starts to really use its own AI, and they're already doing it with podcasts? Maybe Spotify starts creating its very own music that it pays zero royalties to, and maybe we start leaning there. Do you think that's a possibility? Where are you at with that?
If I own Spotify, and from my view, if how I make money is through subscriptions, I lose money by paying artists. So why wouldn't I have an army, an AI department that makes an army of AI music that's just out there? Now, one part of that is that people who pay for Spotify's subscriptions, they pay for it because they're brands, they're artists, like they're brands that they like, kind of like going to the store. You like Nike, you like Adidas, whatever. But in the music world, of course, you like artists. Well, they go to Spotify to hear their artists, not just because there's music there,
Mhm.
right? So maybe Spotify as a whole, I mean, there's a few different things that they can do. One of the things that they can do is create a bunch of AI music, like you said, but it's not going to be artist based unless they have a part of the department that creates artists, AI artists, and maybe, I mean, I really think we're going to see this where somebody or multiple businesses are going to use the AI tools that exist and that are going to be developed, and all of the knowledge of what makes a hit in terms of the music world, and they're going to just try to crank out. It's kind of like advertising. They're just going to crank out all of these AI supposedly hits, and see the 10% that actually do hit. And I think they're just going to take those and popularize the actual quote artist, which is totally fake, right? But it's a fake artist that they're going to put on a pedestal and amplify, and then they have their own brand and their own portfolio of artists that they now control. So I'm pretty sure people are already doing that. I know they're doing it to a small extent on YouTube, but when it comes to Spotify in particular, I mean, again, the choices that they have are always going to be limited to what puts more money in their pocket and what prevents money being taken out of their pocket.
Truth. And I would say that I'd be guilty of probably consuming that music without knowing. I mean, when they say that you're not allowed to use Spotify for machine learning on
Hmm.
an artificial intelligence model, that's a little foggy, right? They say that you can't use it. Does that mean they're not using it to train a machine learning artificial intelligence model?
Exactly.
Probably not the case. So for me, I start to realize, how do I use Spotify? Just like
Yep.
anybody else. I go on for my artists, but then every time I open up my homepage, recommended artists are right there. And it'll be like, because
Exactly.
you listen to X. And that's how I find all of my new artists. I mean, just self-admittedly,
Exactly.
that's where I find them. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know the difference. I would have no
And that's
idea.
and that's what I was going to say. It's like at a certain point, you don't care who the artist is. Like, if you've never heard of them, then it doesn't matter who they are, right? You just like to listen to the music. So that's where I'm going with this. That's what I think we're going to see.
Yeah. And then I think you've got to continue that persona potentially with all the AI tools that exist in social platforms
Uh-huh.
as well, YouTube platforms. It's not hard. And when you really think about the level of difficulty to maintain and build something like that right now, sure, it take a little work, but not a
Yeah.
ton.
No.
And 2 years from now, it's just going to be like I click one button and I've created a musician that goes everywhere, and it's
Exactly.
done. So it's
So
really crazy. Go ahead.
it is, yeah, sure. So real quick, the way that they recommend artists is basically, let's say you take a cluster of certain artists and bands who sound somewhat similar, like they have characteristics, right? And then they recommend other artists that fit the mold in a way. So if I was, head of the AI department in Spotify, in fact, we should get somebody from Spotify on here and talk to them about this.
Hmm.
Not about them doing this, but just to see their thoughts on what they are doing, how they're approaching it. But what I would do is literally they have all the data in the world. So go out there and look at the clusters and what artists are being recommended, and then feed that into an AI to create, quote, perfect new artists that are the epitome, the essence of all of those little clusters. I would find the biggest clusters, then I would make AI artists for all those little clusters and recommend the heck out of those and stop recommending real artists. Now, that
Hmm.
would be if I was an evil music empire wizard, but that's what I would do if the goal was to make a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think it could be happening already. Is the funny thing.
Probably is, man. It is.
Yeah,
Let's be
yeah,
honest. It is happening.
yeah, and I've probably listened. But again, right now I can easily go on social at this point, at least, and be like, oh, okay, I like this guy. Okay, I see what he's doing. I see him recording.
Hmm.
But at some point, that becomes blurred as well. You're like, I don't know. I have no idea. I saw you
No, that's
now,
true.
so I
You
was
can,
waiting for you to
yeah, yeah,
come.
because that's something that we haven't talked about or thought about yet, which is there's a social aspect to this, which is if you think about, before the internet, it's easy to see this. So if you go see a band at a concert, of course you want to go backstage, you buy their T-shirts, you buy their stuff, you want to get closer to them, right? And if you can talk to them backstage, that's like wow, that's the experience. I get to talk to Johnny so and so. But then also, if they come out with, let's say, a VHS tape or a DVD or something like that, you might buy it because you're interested. You're interested in
Hmm.
the group, you're interested in the band or whatever. So there's nothing preventing, let's say, Spotify in this example, and they make all those perfect AI artists. They can also invent all of the stories and footage of them in the studio and like fake characters and everything. Like it can all
Yeah.
be faked, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Dolly?
Yeah.
Dalle? Some people say
Uh huh.
Dolly, Dolly, tomato, tomato. But that one now, as a joke, it's kind of like a joke at this point, but it's kind of scary as well. They're having it create just random commercials now. So, they'll be like, make me a pizza commercial. And it's terrible. It's like Pizza Hug Spot or something. Like it's a terrible name. And like when the people are trying to eat pizzas, like their mouths are all glitching and like trying to eat
Love
pizza.
it.
But if you look at it first, you laugh. You're like, that's pretty funny. But then when you take a step back and you're like, this is the first attempt at using AI to do an entire commercial about a place that doesn't exist with no humans involved,
Yep.
then it starts to be like, okay, that's a little too close for comfort. Like that, they're probably like, just a few tweaks away from it being right. There's a few other ones out there that exist that are pretty funny, like The Rock eating rocks.
Mm.
Is another good video that's pretty on point. There's like beer commercials that they have done as well. that are really, really funny. But again, you start seeing that it's not that far away. This is just one iteration where
Mhm.
somebody said, make me a pizza commercial. That's all it gave it. And then it created a 30-second ad of a pizza commercial just based on it. So yeah, we're getting there. Everything's coming together, not just AI music, but all the AI in general for it to take
Mhm.
over. So what do you think happens um, in the landscape of AI and streaming over like the next 10 to 20 years, man? Like 10 years, we'll say that. Because who knows? 20 years, we might be streaming into our own heads. Who knows?
A lot less than 20 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk was working on Neuralink with being able to do that, to hear music in your head, actually. And that's something that I've actually thought about for a number of years at this point, probably 10 years. But anyway, as far as streaming goes, honestly, the way I look at streaming is anybody who thinks streaming is a good business model to try to make money from or advance your career, you're just not seeing the full picture. And it's kind of like trying to hammer a nail with a feather. It's not going to happen. It's just the wrong tool, right? You need a different tool. So that's where, that's a different topic, but that's where we talk about artists and musicians taking control of their careers, learning business skills, being marketing, things like that. You have to nowadays. But as far as streaming in general, I mean, I honestly think streaming is just going to be like email. It's just built into the fabric of modern day internet, and there's no money to be made off of it. It's just everything is instantly available. And that's how I think streaming is going to converge. What do you think?
I see right now, if I look at it, you're seeing like a massive influx of creators. So, when you are on social media looking through stuff, you see how many TikTok and Instagram guitarists. They're like, I don't know if they've ever toured or done a show at this point or played with a band at this point. They're just in their studio every day being like, let me write a 30-second riff and put it on
Mm-hmm.
here. And then they're doing singles out of that and just releasing them and doing it. So I feel like we're at this part of a curve where it's going up. You're seeing so many actual artists trying to upload and oversaturate the platforms. I think we're going to see a mix of the two in the future. I think we're going to start to see that come down, but AI generated music start to replace those that drop off.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the interest of being an artist will start to drop as AI beats you. Then it becomes more difficult, which it will. It will beat a lot of the people out there that are trying to make it. Understood.
Sure.
But I think that we're going to end up in a space where we go back to our core bands. And then
Mm.
the rest is AI. Like you can't make it unless like you are a decent musician with a good
Yep.
following and you really do an incredible craft and art in the music you're writing rather than like doing a math rock progression on TikTok
Mm-hmm.
15 times and going from there. But yeah, I think that it's just we're gonna see this wave of like we've got a ton of creators. It's gonna feather out and like 50-50. And then we're going to see again. I only go on Spotify or whatever the streaming is at the point to listen to these three bands and then AI music. That's what I listen to. But I think that's where it's going, and it needs embraced. Again, it's a
Sure.
lot of musicians right now that are trying to make it in streaming are probably like pissed because this is
Of course.
happening and this is allowed. Acceptable, I
Mm-hmm.
understand, but it's not going away. So how do you work with it? How do you deal with it and move forward from there? But
Mm-hmm.
very interesting as always to see not only Spotify,
Absolutely.
but the Grammys again coming out, all these big organizations coming out and starting to have to use it and set regulations and be on
Yep.
both sides. Be like on the side of like, we're going to protect you, but also for all the tech companies being like, you could still be on here a little bit. That's fine. Because they don't know. Like at this point, it almost feels like they don't know. They're like, which one's going to be the best outcome? We're
Mm-hmm.
not sure. So they're testing the waters. But yeah. So what are what's your wrap up thoughts, man? What are you thinking about all this?
Yeah, on the whole, again, the main reason we do this is for musicians, artists, etc., to kind of help them see around the corner, right? And in general, it's just a matter of surfing the wave. I mean, you can't if you go to the ocean, you can't control which waves are going to come, how big they're going to be, when they're going to come, what direction they're going to come from. In general, all you can do is just watch what's happening and try to surf the next one. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would advise is that you can be bitter and angry and pissed and mad or whatever about the things that are changing and the things that are happening, but that's life. Life is about adapting, a survival of the fittest, right? It's all I can say is just look around, be aware, see what's happening, and see if you can determine where the flow is going, and just
Mhm.
get on the wave, get behind it, let it carry you.
There will always be a way to succeed. You just have to find which way it is now.
Exactly.
Uh, that's it. That's all. Because it's not going to be the old school. It already isn't. I mean, that's just
Exactly.
albums. Think of Metallica and
It
their
hasn't been.
yeah, Master of Puppets. Great. If they did the same thing for that right now, nobody would know Metallica. It'd be
Hmm.
done. It just changes always. So you got to stay on top of it. And I do think, I will say, I'll end with that. I really think that this process, all this AI, all this tech will do what we're saying it's going to do and have
Yeah.
always said. It will excel the people that are actually doing phenomenal jobs as musicians in a human way rather than AI. You'll start to stand apart. So it's still honing the craft, still work on it. You're just going to have to find a different way to distribute and make money
Hmm.
and figure it out. But as long as you are standing apart, you'll be fine on
Yep.
that side. But yeah, I'm excited for our next one. I'm going to tell you, I'll just leave an open loop here. And in order to watch it, you should like, follow, subscribe, do all the things as well so you don't miss it. But the guest we have is somebody I have been following for a very long time. So I'm very excited to have said guest that I'll leave the open loop on and not tell anybody about. So we'll see you then. As always, thanks for being here. Thanks for following us. Thanks for your comments, all of your interaction. We appreciate you more than you'll ever know. And thanks for
Hmm.
listening to the Future of Music podcast.